Do, 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 do.
Good enough. I believe it's called Dawn from Pride and Prejudice. That was like the last thing I worked on with my piano teacher, senior year of high school.
Were you able to learn it or no?
No, I learned the right hand, definitely.
You quit halfway through?
Like, I think that was always my problem with piano is like, I liked it when it sounded like a song, which you can accomplish only using the right hand. So then so I would learn the right hand first so that it sounded like the thing. And then I would never come back to the left hand unless forced. That's how I learned Hedwig's theme as well.
I don't know. I did piano for like 15 years and I was never that good, but I didn't like differentiate between the hands. I just would only know like half the song, but like halfway through.
I was made for a duet. I was made for someone else to play the left hand. Hello and welcome back to Remake Hot Take, the podcast where we play studio executives pitching remake ideas of our favorite and new media. I'm Marriya Schwarz.
And I'm Brooke Rees. And today we're joined by friend of the pod, Silvana. Do you want to reintroduce yourself for people who may not have seen your other episode?
Sure. Thanks for having me on. I'm a person. I'm sometimes on the internet, and my name is Silvana.
Woo!
That's it.
And today we are doing one of my favorite movies ever, which Silvana was like the one to suggest. Like, had you just watched it for the first time, or?
I rewatched it with a friend recently, but I feel like every woman alive on the planet right now, I've seen this movie multiple times.
Okay, good.
Throughout my life.
I was like, I don't know if this was like a first time watch for her, because if so, like you're late to the train here. But
it had been on my mind recently, one because Pride and Prejudice got a shout out in the movie Barbie, and then also because I recently finished watching Succession, and Mr. Darcy also plays Mr. Tom Wamsgans in Succession. So can I spoil Succession or no?
I haven't seen it and I don't have plans to.
He won Succession.
It was a game?
Sort of. In the way that the Throne of England is a game to win, you know?
Oh.
Yeah.
Hooray!
He like gets to like run like the media company, right?
He becomes CEO, yes.
Oh, so he succeeds?
He Wamsgams all the siblings.
That's an unfortunate name.
He becomes the CEO. Yeah, because there's I think it was like a baseball player with the same last name who inspired his character, who like
is he bullied?
He beat like 3 people in order to win the home run or something. I could be wrong. But it was something someone on TikTok dug up information on and was like, oh, I think this is gonna be like the end of Succession because like this is his same last name. And they were right.
So Brooke, do you actually want to name the movie that we are?
So we are watching Pride and Prejudice, which, like I said, is one of my favorites. I think it's one of Marriya. It's one of your favorites too, right?
Which Pride and Prejudice? The BBC one?
I'm sorry. In my mind, there's only one, but it's the 2005 Pride and Prejudice with Matthew McFadden, Keira Knightley, directed by, what is it, Joe Wright?
It's the movie adaptation. The other is technically like a series, a mini-series. So
yeah.
Has anyone seen that?
I've seen some of it. It's boring. I'm sorry.
I think I've only seen a little bit of it, but this is the only one in my heart. I actually haven't read the full book of Pride and Prejudice. I got it like a year ago and I'm maybe like halfway into it. So I don't know, fake fan.
I'm kind of the same. Like I feel like I'm kind of a poser because I haven't read the book in its entirety either. But I've seen like almost every adaptation of like modern day Jane Austen, those types of movies, things like that. That it's like we all know the storyline. So
So would you both consider yourself like Janeites?
No.
Would you consider yourself Marriya?
I took a Jane Austen class, so yeah.
Cool.
And when I took my Jane Austen class, Brooke said, and I quote, "Oh my gosh, reading all of Jane Austen sounds like fun. I'll do it with you." And then she proceeded to not.
Yeah, I said that, and then I bought bought Pride and Prejudice. That's when I bought it. And then I did not finish it.
I also own a copy of one of Jane Austen's books, and I have not read it.
Man.
I now own every, not every copy, but every book.
No, every copy ever printed.
Every
Marriya owns.
yeah, it's like the Parent
it.
Trap.
Yeah.
Is Pride and Prejudice your favorite book of hers, or do you have a different favorite?
I feel like this is like the one that makes me the least mad.
Really?
So in my Jane Austen class, we didn't read Pride and Prejudice because she's like, I assume everyone has already read this book. And then we proceeded for the rest of the semester to compare every male love interest to Mr. Darcy because he's like the pinnacle and then everyone else sucks. And, you know, I read for the romance, but everyone else is like creepy. They're like a groomer. They like put down the female character. So I think Mr. Darcy's like the top one. He's also, you know, the richest. Like he would be one of the top 10 richest men in England, which I feel like that's not stressed as much.
Yeah.
In the movie, it's like, oh, you know, he has money, but it's like he's like Bezos. You know,
he's got money.
He's got money.
like we're eating him when we're eating the rich.
Yeah.
Wow, that's true. I guess Mr. Darcy would be one of the first to go if they started eating the rich. This is a little after this is way after the French Revolution, right? The time,
yeah,
like 100 years, or
yeah, this is the Regency period.
I guess my real question was, when did the French Revolution take place?
1789 to 1799.
If you watched like Queen Charlotte, the Bridgerton story, like that was right before the Regency period, and then like Queen Victoria was right after. So it's like in between those, because basically a lot of the plot of Queen Charlotte is about like, oh, none of my kids are producing heirs for me and stuff. And that's kind of like the whole thing is like the king goes mad and his son has to take over as the Prince Regent. So then that's the Regency period. And then when he dies, that's Queen Victoria. Yeah.
I never knew that's where the word Regency comes from.
That's like the only thing I got out of the Jane Austen class because she said that like every class.
Oh, I love that. I learned something new.
All right. Well, let's jump into the film. I guess we can also talk about this as like a phenomenon, right? I mean, it was mentioned in the Barbie movie, but I think they referenced the BBC.
The wrong one.
They do.
Yeah.
I also think they know that this is the version they're trying to refer to, but this is more expensive to like be able to include a clip of in the movie. Yeah, so it's cheaper to get the BBC version. That's the only reason why I think they did that.
Gosh.
But that's just my hypothesis. Plenty of people like Colin Firth. Me, myself, I'm just not as big of a fan of his version. And he's been Mr. Darcy twice because he was also in Bridget Jones' Diary as the like Darcy character. But I mean, maybe I'm just not as thrilled by British men in general as other people are. Colin Firth never really did it for me, or Hugh Grant. Maybe that's controversial, but they seem like fine, polite gentlemen.
You're like, I would shake their hands, but I'm not going to fuck them anytime soon. I don't know. I like both of those English actors, but that's funny. Yeah, they give a little nod in the Barbie movie because I feel like it has become an overwhelming like cultural phenomenon. I don't know if it was like successful enough at the box office when it first came out for us to call it like a cult classic, but it has taken on like a new wave with young women, and I don't know what it is, but Keira Knightley is my like period piece queen.
Yeah.
She cannot go wrong when she's wearing a corset, or like she can do no wrong. As soon as she slips that corset on, I'm like, I believe it. Like I believe that she is in that time period and she's absolutely slaying. I love her so much. But
well, it's like that kind of thing where it's like some people have the look like they've never seen an iPhone, and I feel like she has it.
I think that's like a British person thing as well.
Yeah.
Like they're better at playing period pieces than like Americans just look more modern, I guess. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but
if I had to pinpoint it, it would probably be like the lack of veneers, because like every American actor has shaved down their real teeth and they all have this shiny veneers that all look exactly the same. And Keira Knightley is like rocking what I assume are her like natural teeth in this. She's a mouth actor. There's a lot of focus on her mouth in this movie. But yeah, I don't know when I started becoming obsessed with it. Like maybe like 10 years ago or so, I put it on for the first time. And it's so, the romance is its own thing, right? And it's one of those where it's like a romantic film, but it's all about the tension. It's all
Yeah.
about the will they, won't they. There's no big like on-screen like sex scene or something. It's all about like the tension and what they're giving us and not giving us on the screen. But it's a beautiful film. Like the cinematography is
Very
gorgeous.
bucolic.
Yeah, like, oh my, yes. It is like an advertisement for moving to like rural farmland of England. I'm like, yes, I want to stroll the little like fields and I want to meet Mr. Darcy in the middle of one at like 3 a.m. But it's so beautiful. The cinematography, like the lighting in this, it seems like I'm sure it's not all natural lighting, but they use a lot of like natural lighting times at like dawn,
Yeah.
like
The
the name of
sunlight. Yeah.
sunlight streaming in through the windows and all these beautiful like backlit shots with the sun like shining through, and you get the characters' profiles. And then the score is so beautiful too. It carries throughout the whole movie. Sometimes it's like diegetic, right? Like sometimes it's like Mary playing the piano, and then like Keira Knightley and Lizzie playing
And
the
then I was
piano.
like, because it was like everyone was playing the song, and I was like,
Yeah.
is this like the Taylor Swift of like, they're like, Dad, I have to learn Dawn. That's what everyone at the ball is gonna mock me if I play Minuet in C minor.
Pachelbel's canon. They're like, absolutely not. That was so last year. Dawn is so 1795. But yeah, so it's just a beautiful movie. And it's one where like it's a good background film for me. Like I can have it on in the background, and it's one where it's like I can watch it a million times and literally never get sick of it. Like I watched it, I think 3 weeks ago, and then I rewatched it again this morning for the pod. I was like, of course. And I was still just as engaged every time.
I think it's one of those films where I honestly can't remember the first time I saw it. Like, I don't believe I saw it in theaters or anything, but it's been like a comfort film for such a long time. And I think it's a lot of people's comfort film. I think a lot of it is like the music and the pleasant scenery and the like comforting feeling of like living on the countryside in like beautiful houses. I can definitely understand why people are calmed by it. But yeah, I also think because it came out like 10, 15, maybe 20 years ago. I think it's just like that familiarity that people gravitate towards. And yeah, Keira Knightley was definitely like an it girl of that time as well. So whenever I see her in a film, I'm like, oh yeah, the good old days of like the 2000s.
I texted Marriya, she was so young in this, and this was after she had done Pirates, right? So she was in Pirates of the Caribbean as Elizabeth Swann.
I think she was like 17 when she started filming.
She was
Crazy.
so young in that. And then because like I read like the Wikipedia page for like kind of behind the scenes, because I was looking at the director Joe Wright, because he did then Atonement with Keira Knightley, but then like Darkest Hour too. So he kind of he kind of has a little bit of a different tone with that. But they were talking about trying to cast for this film, and they wanted to have like Keira Knightley to also appeal to like the younger generation that was watching Pirates of the Caribbean and how much they loved that and how big of a success that was. And then Matthew Macfadyen, though he was like popular in England, he was not like internationally known at all.
Oh, was he popular in England? I've only seen 2 things he's ever done with Succession and Pride and Prejudice, which might be like the biggest things he's ever done. But
well, according to the Wikipedia page, he was like a well-known, like good actor.
I feel like every Wikipedia page says that.
They're gonna be like, he was a nobody on his Wikipedia
It's the
page.
same way that every movie is the #1 movie in America.
Off topic a little bit. Did you guys know that there's a different ending for the English, like UK original release than there is for the American one? Yes. So the very last scene where she's like, "You can only call me Mrs. Darcy when you're perfectly incandescently happy." They do not have that. It cuts off when the Bennett, what's his name? Daddy Bennett. when Daddy Bennett is like, if anyone wants to marry Kitty or Mary, just send him in. I'm quite at my leisure. And then it cuts off there. That's like the last scene that they get.
That's crazy, because I was watching clips on YouTube as like a refresher earlier today. One, because my Netflix subscription ran out, so I don't have access to the movie anymore. But I saw that clip and I was like, oh, I've seen the clip before, but I don't remember watching that scene as like a younger kid. Like I don't have that ingrained the same way, like the scene with like where they kiss with the sunlight and like they like ask the dad's permission and everything like that. Like those I remember very well. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. And I was trying to pick out like what the setting was because I think they're near water, but they're just like kneeling on this thing, and Mr. Darcy starts out standing and then he kneels as well. And it's a very cute scene, but I think he's like not wearing shoes or socks, so his calves are showing. So I think maybe like his calves were just like too risque, like it was too scandalous.
Yeah, I remember looking at also those scenes on YouTube and a bunch of British people being like, I've never seen this before. And I was like, you've been deprived.
Yeah. The rumor that I've heard is that American like test audiences needed
they were like, it needs to be sexier.
Yeah, they needed like that final sexy scene. And I think it was
they're just talking to each other.
Well, they finally kiss in that scene, but I think that what it said is that like when British test audiences saw that scene, first of all, it's like not anywhere in the original book, but then that they thought it was like a bit off character for Mr. Darcy, especially because like he has like a totally different personality now, which I can see.
Well, I think it's more just like they're finally that close now that he's allowed to like be that open. But that's so interesting. I guess, well, I think the version I would rewatch as a kid was purchased on iTunes. So we might have just like purchased the British version.
The UK version.
I might be wrong, but I believe the British test audience was all nuns. So just them being too close was just...
The sample size is a little skewed. Yeah, I thought that was funny because I love that last scene too. But in terms of where they are, I think they're at Pemberley. Yeah, they're at Mr. Darcy's.
They're at that famous lake with all this that's stocked with fish.
Yeah. They're at the well-stocked lake. They're about to fuck on the dock.
If you look closely in the background, you just see a little fish.
It flies and then pops out. Yeah, I think he's also wearing like jorts. He's wearing like cut off.
They're not jeans, but they're definitely just cut offs. Yeah.
There is like a little frayed edge to them. So I'm like, I wonder if, he was in full pants and then they were like, no, for this scene. And then like the costume like director like ran over with a pair of scissors and was like, this is it. Carry on.
Are the same scissors that they cut Marriya's bangs with today? They cut his pants.
Yeah, they were like more bang, which it really is like just one big advertisement for a haircut because everyone is rocking them except for Jane. She's got just little wispies, but Lizzie is rocking like her bangs go like all the way here. Like not just like like a blunt fringe. It's like the entirety of the sideburns too. But Marriya, did you want to talk about how you came to love and adore this movie or what it means to you?
I think I probably found it like on Netflix or something, and then I watched it and my mom was like, what are they doing to Pride and Prejudice? But then whenever I'm watching it, she comes in and she watches it too. And then it was like taken off Netflix. So then they bought me the DVD for Christmas, which is currently in my storage locker.
I'm surprised you didn't watch the movie pre-Netflix. I think the film itself predates Netflix.
I mean, it's 2005.
Did anyone do the Netflix DVD subscription?
No.
Yes, my dad did. We got 28 weeks later in the mail from Netflix. And then we had to mail it back. And I think that's the only movie we ever did. That's funny that you said that like your mom was opposed to it because my mom and I watched it for the first time. I think like maybe 2 months ago we watched it for the first time because she knew like how much I loved it and how obsessed it was. Also, for anyone that's like keeping track here, another big key component to me liking this movie is that I've mentioned time and time again is that I may have a little bit of like a colonial man fetish. And Mr. Darcy, again, it's like the white flowing shirt. Marriya, move to the side so we can see him. That scene in particular, when he's like all buttoned
just walking
down. It's the way he walks too. Matthew McFadyen, he's putting his whole
also like it's the detail of he rides everywhere. but
Mhm.
he walks to her because she likes to walk.
And he's just strutting, like, it's so good. He's almost walking like pelvis first in a couple scenes. And I'm like, wow, this is really doing it for me. So that's another perk. But my mom was like, I have to see what this is about. And then she was like, wow, that was a beautiful movie. And I was like, yes, it was, Mom. That was pure sex that you just saw on scene. That was pure masculine energy. And I was eating it up.
I think like the appeal to me is that it is the romance movie for awkward introverts. Like everyone in this movie is awkward. Like I don't think there's anyone who is sure of themselves in this entire movie, except
Yeah.
maybe like Wickham, and like that's a red flag, you know? Like everyone is
Lydia.
awkward.
Yeah, Lydia is pretty like, she's pretty sure of herself, but
Fuck Lydia.
not in a good way, and everyone hates her.
That goes into like the period thing of like Sense and Sensibility, of like it was bad to be too sensible, which like in that period meant like sensitive. And so like she's basically like bringing scorn to her family by being like overly emotional. It's like you have to be the balance between sense and sensibility. Jane leads more to sense than sensibility, and then she's like, you're too uptight, you're aloof.
I didn't know that's what like the understanding of sensibility was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That makes my understanding of the film and book Sense and Sensibility way different.
Right?
I haven't watched the entire movie of Sense and Sensibility, but I've seen clips multiple times. Like I'll walk into someone watching it on the TV multiple times, but I'll never watch it all the way through.
How often are you entering people's
Yeah.
homes?
It's just on TV often. I forget what channel. It's probably BBC America.
Whenever I break into a house, they're like always watching Sense and Sensibility.
But like with Alan Rickman, Emma Thompson, and Kate Winslet, like I'll see them playing that movie and like on like the E channel too, like all the time. I just won't bother to watch the entire thing. I'll just pop in and out. I think Kate Winslet ends up with Alan Rickman, and that pairing really like bummed me out. So I was like, I don't really,
Yeah.
I don't really like this.
See, that's
film.
what I'm saying is like
no.
this is Mr. Darcy is like the peak man because everyone else is like creepily old, and
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, because I really like Emma, and I like that storyline. I like Clueless and everything, but just like that fact that he was so much older was like, yeah, I can understand the creepiness factor.
I guess that's like, yeah, that's kind of sad because Mr. Darcy turns himself around, but he starts out very bad. Like, you know, he starts out saying essentially, like, your whole family is trash, and also you're trash, but I happen to be attracted to this trash. But even then, I'm like, I don't know, he's still sexy then. But he turns himself around and he puts in the work to get in that relationship and to get back her trust. But
Everyone is kind of bad.
Well, it reminds me of that Phoebe Bridgers song where she's just like, I hate your mom, but they're like in a relationship still.
Oh,
Or he just like has to learn to appreciate her family.
the mother-in-law I feel like would be difficult, but also like she's not a villain necessarily in the way that some of the other mothers in Jane Austen books are, because like you can see that the only way that a woman can really make any income is through marriage, and they're about to get all of their homes taken away and everything. But basically like Northanger Abbey, the guy like mocks the female love interest, and he's like, you're stupid, you read books that aren't history. And then Sense and Sensibility, the guy is like already engaged, then the other guy is old. And Mansfield Park, his family like bullies her. Emma, he like grooms her from an early age. Yeah, I mean, I also do really like the cast for the most part of this movie, you know, except for like, I want to know how Jenna Malone got there. Like, how did the girl from Kentucky, like at least Donald Sutherland has like the decency to be Canadian, you know, like
Donald Sutherland is Canadian?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, they both were in the Hunger Games, right?
Mm-hmm.
yep, President Snow.
Yeah, I do really enjoy this cast. I think everybody does a good job, and it's nice to see that everybody also like went on to do like other things and they're like still famous and stuff.
Justice for Mary.
True. But I do remember it was like some sort of interview, either with the actor or the director, where they talked about the casting and how they weren't really concerned about making them look similar and like look related, but made sure their mannerisms and sort of the way they acted the characters, you could tell that they had that commonality and that they like laughed the same way or like had similar habits, things like that, that families share, as opposed to like they all look the same, you know?
I also will say, like, this is one of the only movies that I think Donald Sutherland doesn't like creep me out. So he's a good actor.
Well, that's true. He wasn't like a creepy character at all, but in the last scene, I did notice this time around, I think Keira Knightley like kisses his forehead or something like that. And I just was very keenly aware of the fact of how small her head was compared to the size of his head. I was like, wow, that man has a very large head. So, which, you know, humans come in all shapes and sizes, but I was like, wow, the contrast.
Silvana is body shaming Donald Sutherland.
I'm head shaming, yeah.
Well, I love Mr. Collins.
Mhm.
He is such a funny little character, and I feel like he has just like the best moments. I mean, he's obviously written for like comedic relief in this movie in the sense that he is like so pathetic, but like all of the comedy comes from like those moments. You know, I think like the first like 3 times that I watched this when I was like, you know, 10 years ago when I was 13, I think I wasn't taking in all of the like subtle like jabs at him. I really had to like sit down and like pay attention to what they were actually saying in the dialogue. And one of my favorite moments is like when he like sits down at dinner and he's like, what excellent boiled potatoes. But then he's also saying that like he loves to give women compliments, and that essentially, you know, he's like, I love to think of these little things of like, oh, I don't know, like, you know, her hair is pretty or whatever, like comes to him in the moment. And then it's such a funny moment when Lizzie basically is like, oh, like, do you rehearse these compliments? And then he's like, sometimes I do. And she was like, and okay, well, no one would think that your manners were rehearsed. Which I think is just such a funny back and forth that they have.
He's such a name dropper too.
He likes to be well connected.
Lady Catherine, like it's like someone who is like seen Scarlett Johansson from afar and like won't stop talking about it. That's like the vibe.
I like met Scarlett Johansson in a cafe once. How common was marrying cousins? Or like does cousin
well, it is England, you know?
Yeah,
it's a different
it's
vibe
very-
over there.
Is
Limited
that-
gene pool. It's an island. You can only meet so many people on the
Yeah, but, like,
island.
I don't know why, but in my mind, I thought that was reserved for like the Mr. Darcy caliber, like the rich
Yeah.
people.
Well, yeah, the like keeping the money in the family kind of
Mhm.
thing. I can understand, but
And that's why Mr. Collins wanted to marry from his own family that he was gonna inherit.
well, they also did that in Gilmore Girls, just to give
What?
some context to like the money type thing. Richard Gilmore's mother married her cousin, so they both were named Gilmore. Her maiden name was also Gilmore, and she was like, if she wanted to keep it in the family, she wanted to
I mean,
remain a Gilmore.
It's
So,
hard going to the bank,
yeah,
opening
it's like-
another account. It's just
Right?
easier.
Yeah, even as recent as that, you know, people do it sometimes, I guess. I mean, it's not recommended.
Not recommended. Jeez, it's a miracle people were walking out of there without tails and stuff.
Some
Yeah.
people have been born with tails before. It's, you know.
Now
These
who's
things
body
happen.
shaming?
Listen, all tails are beautiful. I would do a genealogy, ancestors.com if you do.
Well,
have-
the most common result of marrying your cousin is the blue eye gene, Brooke.
I have green eyes. Excuse me. My bloodline is pure. Silvana.
Whoa.
Mine is not. We've like
But-
traced down cousins and
No blue eyes.
no.
I don't think my parents are cousins, but we've never.
Yeah, they say that's like rare gene or something, that like to have blue eyes, it means that some sort of cousin or cousin adjacent situation was going on.
Yeah, I think
Somewhere.
actually green eyes are even more rare than blue eyes.
Yeah.
So do you think just like everyone in my family was fucking each other and this is how I find out? Yeah, I think it's
Who
like
knows?
2% of the world's population has green eyes, and like blue eyes is like 9%, 6 to 9% or something. But no, we've never done an ancestry.com genealogy search, mostly because like I don't know if my parents just like committed crimes, but they're like, no, then the government like has your DNA. And like I bought my mom a kit for like Christmas like 5 years ago, and then she never did it because she was like, no, then they have your DNA. And I was like, yeah, but like, have you done something illegal? And she would not say.
Because then she's in the database. When they run, you know, the fingerprints from the murder scene, her name's going to come up. You don't want that.
That solved like a cold case or something where like this
Oh,
guy's daughter went for like a free gyno exam at her college, and then that's how they caught him. So
Oh no.
Yeah.
Women's healthcare.
Solving murders.
Solving murders left and right. That happens all the time though now. Like that happens all the time. Like you better count your freaking blessings that your extended family never wants to find out about their ancestry because it happens all the time. But I don't know. I don't know what Deborah is hiding. She's either hiding the cousin thing or she's a murderer. So
yeah, those are the only two options.
Those are the only two. Wow, it's not looking good for me, guys. Yeah, I didn't realize that was like as common of a practice that late into like we're in like the 1800s, right? I thought it was just something that like royalty did, but I guess everyone was doing it.
It was the trend of the time.
Because Mr. Darcy was supposed to marry his cousin too. I guess, you know, you already know him. So it's not as awkward.
where'd you two meet? Meet cute at the reunion.
Where'd you two meet? Playdate when we were 3 years old.
Yeah, it's always funny too to like watch back movies that you've seen when you're younger as an older person and just like see all the jokes you didn't pick up on, or just like any movie you rewatch 1,000 times. It's like each rewatch will be like slightly different. You'll pick up on something else. Yeah. It's always enjoyable to do that. But yeah, little jokes that will land for me on like the 6th watch are always like the best.
I know. I feel like for those movies, the comfort watches, like I'm never paying attention like 100% of my time. I'm always on my phone for like a portion of it since I've seen it so much. But it seems to happen where like I'm on my phone for like a different portion of it each time. So I'm like, I didn't pay attention to the last like 10 times. Let me see what's going on here. This time when I was watching through, I was trying to like Google the different areas that they had mentioned. Because you know, it's like Miss Lucas, Charlotte, her like close friend marries Mr. Collins, and then they go off. And I'm like, you know, I wonder like how far away they are from each other. Because it's like she's probably only like, I don't know, 10 miles away. But that's like far enough in the 1800s that she only gets to see her like once every year now, which is also like kind of funny to think. And then that led me on like a whirlwind journey of looking up these different places that they mention. And I think one of them's called like, what is it? It's called like the Peaks or something. But it's this like beautiful area, you know, when she has that moment when she's like standing like near the cliff and her dress is like billowing up behind her. That's that area that they mention. And then I was like trying to get like a sense of the scale of England. So I was like, what US state? Well, because I was like, England is so small. And I was like, no wonder they were trying to like conquer everywhere else. Like they needed room to expand. Like they were in like a tiny little house and they were trying to do an add-on to like get some more room in there. But I was like, it's basically like England alone, not the UK in its entirety, but England alone is like the size of the state of like New York or something. Which is just crazy. And I think that is like a cultural like shock for like Europeans to hear about. Is when someone in the US is like, oh yeah, like I went on a trip to go see like my grandparents in Chicago, and they're like, oh my God, like how long of a drive was that? And you're like, oh, it was like a 15-hour drive, you know, like we just left early in the morning, and like a 15-hour drive for them could get them through like halfway through like a different continent. They would drive through like 6 countries, which is insane. But yeah, England is teeny tiny.
Yeah, they're definitely very dramatic when it comes to like traveling to go places. They're like, oh, well, she lives like an hour away, so I only get to see her, like, I have to take a whole train for 45 minutes. And I'm like, I mean, that's just someone's commute to work.
In the US?
Yeah, like, my family would do, like, day trips to New York. So, like, wake up, do 4-hour drive, hang out, chill, see something, and then drive 4 hours back. And that's, like, a whole day of it. And it's not, like, an insane amount of driving time. I think 15 hours is a pretty long time. But 4, I think, is very manageable for most Americans.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They're very much like, ooh, 30 minutes. That's like, I need to bring a snack. I need a book. And I'm like, That's like, what, 4 songs on the radio? Come on.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. But yeah, obviously the hand flex is another iconic moment of this film, which I think like people were trying to determine if that was like improv by Matthew McFadden, which I think it was. But yeah, it's just like, oh, just adding to that tension and like the sex of like non-sexual things.
Yeah, like I feel like in the real modern world of today, like men don't yearn the way that he yearned, you know? And it's
so
very
true.
disappointing.
Yeah,
It is.
that's really the issue. Men don't yearn like they used to.
It's all like just texting you up, and like
But it's
Darcy
like,
would never.
it's like, do they even like women all that much? Like, it doesn't seem like they're all that interested.
No.
No, Mr. Darcy, he liked women. He appreciated women.
Despite their background and their
Despite
family.
Yeah.
Despite all his hesitation. I guess I also don't understand like the ins and outs of the politics of an unmarried woman running off with a man. I understand that how that would ruin her, but I guess I was never enlightened to how that would ruin her entire family. And so like I guess just like one of the daughters being a slut, they were like, you can't marry any of those other whores. Is that how that works? Is it just like they think that like all
that's
of them are also
it reflects
bad?
on your breeding.
Yeah, you're just associated with that forever.
Can you imagine how pissed you would be if like your shitty little sister who's
That's
been
why they're so pissed. And then like literally, which I think is like true for all children of emotionally immature parents, when she's like, Mom, we were just like so mad at her, like, don't you remember that happened? And she's like the only one that's living with the burden. The mom is like, I'm so happy that she's my daughter and that she's married, because it's such a relief in the end, but they all went through the trauma.
Yeah. I was paying attention more to the scene where Mr. Bennet and Lizzie are talking about Lydia going off to Brighton with the Forsters or something, Colonel Forster. And I was that was like one of the scenes that I was paying attention more this time, since I was on my phone the last time that I watched it. And like Lizzie knows, she says that like Lydia's going to get in trouble. Like she freaking calls it from the start. And Mr. Bennet, he's so done with Lydia's shit. He's literally like, well, she's never going to give us a day of peace if like we tell her that she can go and then we tell her that she can't. And then he's also like very harsh, but like kind of true. He's like, Lydia needs to recognize her own insignificance in this world. And I was like, oh shit, I guess like we all do kind of have those moments when we leave home for the first time and go out to venture elsewhere. But I don't think she did learn her own insignificance, because Mr. Wickham just got into her pants real quick.
I worry about her in the marriage. Like you see that part where she's like waving and then he like pulls her down. I don't know. I just feel like he is abusive. I don't know. Did anyone else get those vibes?
Oh, for sure. That's what Lizzie says. She says like, you know, the Mrs. Bennet is like crying because her daughter is leaving her. She's just like an emotional wreck. She would have so benefited from like an SSRI. Like she really had some like high highs and low lows, but she's so like overjoyed that now one of her daughters is married off, which it is stressful for to have like, how many are there? 5 of them? 5 daughters?
That's true.
But then she like starts sobbing because Lydia is now leaving her and she's sad to see one of her children go off. But yeah, that's what Lizzie says, you know, and that's why she treats also Mr. Wickham so poorly. I think Lizzie kind of couldn't really give a shit about her reputation and if she ever did marry a man. But I think she also is very much worried for Lydia. And even though they don't have like the best relationship amongst the siblings, I think she knows that Mr. Wickham is bad news and that she's not going to have a happy marriage with him. I mean, and truthfully, like Lydia sucks. She's like a little twerp, but she was like 15, right? Or like
maybe that's just his type, because he prayed after Georgiana at that same age. Yeah,
after the other 15-year-old. So
he's like the Leonardo DiCaprio of the military.
He has a certain age set and he cannot go above that. She's a victim in that scenario too, even though her personality is pretty grating.
The idea of a spinster is also talked about in this film. And as women of a certain age, would you consider us spinsters, or would you use a different terminology? I think there's a list somewhere of like
Oh
all the different
yeah.
words they use for unmarried women above a certain age.
I've seen that. They get like pretty funny. they get like weird, and people are like, I'm a bird watcher, like whatever.
Yeah, because I think at this age, I think we've all aged out of spinsterhood. Like we're too old.
I think we're even worse. But personally, I'm not going to worry about it until I'm 30. And then I want kids so bad. If I'm 35 and I'm still unwed, I'm popping one out myself. I'm going to the sperm bank and I'm going to see what they have on file.
I think I might get nervous if I end up at 27, no money, no prospects, a burden to my family, and I'm frightened. That might be when I start feeling it.
I think that's a classic age.
I mean, Marriya, do you have just like that checklist hanging over your head?
Money, prospects, not burden. One of the weird things I noticed this time is like the weird almost like subplot they had with Mary. Like they didn't really like go into depth, but like she's the only one who stands when Mr. Collins comes into the room. She's the only one who doesn't laugh at him. So I'm like, is there like a weird subplot going on where it's like she should marry Mr. Collins? Because like we should suggest that.
I have noticed that before. I was hoping that wasn't the case because it's icky still. Yeah. I thought it was maybe just like she seems to be the one that's like forgotten the most and like picked on, and they don't let her play the piano, and her like Mr. Bennett at the one ball scene, which also one of my favorite like singular scenes in this movie, or like one of my favorite singular shots, is when Darcy and Lizzie are dancing at Bingley's ball, and then like all of the other people in the background fade away, and then it's just them. And it's just like the score, and it's so like beautiful.
Dances are so complex. Like that's why we have like the cha-cha slide now. Like I need to be told what to do. Like how am I like I would be elbowed in the face so many times.
No, I always love the dance scenes in these types of films. And it's also, to me, the only thing reminiscent of that in the modern world is like a middle school dance, where it's like boys and girls are forced to attend and like hang out together at like a school function. Because I mean, modern day parties for like adults, there's no, you know, code of conduct, pre-rehearsed steps and dances and stuff like that. And there are definitely a lot of scenes where she's dancing and holding a conversation with Jane and like her cousin at the same time. And then like her and Jane scurry off to like whisper in a corner because like she agreed to dance with Mr. Darcy. Like that's middle school behavior to me. I'm like, oh my god, like Brian S just asked me to dance or whatever. Like that's very like young giddy love, and that's the only thing I can really compare it to, because I feel like adults don't really have the town is coming together to socialize. You really lose that sense of community after like age 12.
In my mind, I've always compared it to like Texas line dancing at a bar. That's what I've always like compared it to, and what I've always like wanted to recreate in my mind, because they do that at like a small town bar, and they have like, you know, a mechanical bull in the corner, but then they also do line dancing, and everyone like gets in on it and has fun. So you have middle school dances, and then you have to go to Texas to recreate that atmosphere. I guess I'll give a last shout out to like also the rain scene when she's like running in the rain and is drenching wet, which I feel is like a very Keira Knightley thing. Like she's like drenching wet.
Rained on.
Yeah, she gets rained on a lot in Pirates of the Caribbean. But it works for her. She looks good when she's like drenching wet and like miserable and mad at someone. It's a good look for her. But that's like honestly their most like sexually charged scene, is when they're screaming at each other, and he's just basically called her like trash, and then she's screaming at him, and then they like get close for that like 1 second. They're like looking at each other like up and down, looking at each other's lips. But I love that scene. And I don't know, like what kind of structure are they under? It's not like a gazebo, but it's like random columns. Which you can go and like visit it on like a Pride and Prejudice tour of where they filmed.
Oh, they still have the Darcy statue at Pemberley. I was mad at her like aunt and uncle when they were like, he's so civil, not at all like you painted him. Like it's family, take her side, you know? Like I don't know. I felt like
That's
my
true.
my family has to be ride or die for me, not siding with the man. I don't know.
I agree with that. If I have an enemy, my whole family has an enemy. Like
Ari, right, do we want to move into the remakes? Obviously, this is a perfect film, so all of these suggestions are just silly goofy. But I think that, if we were to remake this in modern times, one really easy change that we could have with the casting is that we replace Mr. Collins, who is played by Tom Hollander, with Tom Holland. I think we just do a little switcheroo there. And then we're, appealing to an even younger cast. And they seem like, in my mind, they are similar heights. Is Tom Holland short? He just seems short to me.
He is short.
He's very charismatic, but I think he could play pathetic well. And then, he's physically attractive, but I think Tom Hollander, he's in Pirates of the Caribbean too. I don't think he's ugly. So I think Tom Holland is a bit more traditionally attractive, but then it's a fun game, then it's Miss Lucas is a lucky girl for getting with him. So I think we could really boost up his character. He could be a short king, as they say. And I think that we make that one little swap, Tom Hollander with Tom Holland.
Maybe, and then in the next one, it's Tom Hollandist. We have Tom Holland, Tom Hollander, and then Tom Hollandist for the levels. I don't know if we found that actor yet, but we're looking.
He's out there. The casting directors are scouring the English countryside. Another one is, I think that Darcy's shirt in the last scene, or second to last scene, should be unbuttoned even a little more. I want to see belly button. I want it to be even.
He has a piercing.
Yeah, I want to see his belly button ring. I want to see a little hair. I think it needs to go a couple more buttons down. That's really just a selfish remake. That one's just for me.
No, you just want a cardigan. You just want the whole.
I basically just want to open it. I just want no shirt, actually.
But only for the American audience. I don't know if the British audience could take it.
Just CGI a shirt on for the UK audience.
Yeah, green screen the shirt on for the rest of them. Another moment that we could remake is that Lizzie is talking with Catherine de Bourgh when she went over to visit Charlotte and Mr. Collins, and she is very unashamed to say that she's not good at the piano, and she's not very musical. She doesn't have all these talents. And I think that instead of making her play the piano, they make her play a recorder, like we all had to do in 4th grade. And then we just get to hear the dulcet tones of a badly played recorder. And I think that also just hits that nostalgia, at least for the American audience. I don't know what they're doing over there in the UK, but I think that's just another way to pull at our nostalgic heartstrings. And then my last one is that instead of Pride and Prejudice, it's called Fried and Prejudice, and it's a cooking show spinoff, similar to the British Bake Off, but they're all in period piece clothing, and they're making fried foods only. And the judges are prejudiced. They do not like people of color. That's another spin-off show. It'll get quickly canceled, but I think Netflix will give it at least one season. But fried Oreos, fried chicken, anything of that variety.
So I think in the Pride and Prejudice community, everyone has written a book from Mr. Darcy's perspective, because we don't know what he was doing really when he was looking for Lydia and everything, and everyone has written their spin-off version. So has my aunt, Mr. Darcy and the Secret of Becoming a Gentleman by Marriya Hamilton, which you can purchase now. But every fan fiction writer has written something from Mr. Darcy's perspective. I think we throw it back to Mary. I think she is really the unspoken hero of this story. She's very observant. She's going to notice things that other people don't. All of her things are going to be another ball. It's going to be, I want to hear her story. I want to hear about the piano practices. I want to hear about how much she wants to read and how much she hates her sisters. And I think that's the perspective that we want. She's Jane is doing her thing. Here's what I read in chapter 11 of the Bible. I don't know. That's kind of the vibe that I get from her.
Chapter 11.
I've never read the Bible. I grew up atheist. I'm sorry. And then I had a very similar remake idea to you, Brooke, where, like Lizzie is being asked to play the pianoforte for Judi Dench. Instead of playing Dawn, she just plays Chopsticks. Because then I think it would be funny if she's like, I can't play well, and then she just like does the best that she can. And I just think it would be funny if like they're like do 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 do, and they're like, and it just keeps going in the background, and then they're like, so Mr. Darcy, how's Georgiana doing? And you're just hearing Chopsticks in the back.
Darcy come over and like play the accompanying part.
Right? She's like, play the pianoforte, and she's like, I'm not modest, I really can't play. And then she's like, you must, I really enjoy to hear it. And she walks over to the pianoforte and she's like, no, not that one. And she pulls out the like large piano from the toy store in Big, and she has to jump. My final one is that I noticed that a lot of this movie, the way it's filmed, it would be very, very easy to switch it to a horror movie. Like we have like the moments where like she's sitting in church and she's looking at Darcy, and then we have like the sudden look up and then we switch away. Like it would be so easy to change it to a horror movie. Like there's that time where she's looking for Mr. Wickham at the ball, and like he's like right behind her, like Mr. Darcy is like trailing after her. I just feel like if we add particular music to it, we could make this into a horror film. I kind of wrote a little bit of a plot of it. So when we first meet Mr. Darcy, he's on verge of a freak out. He's just killed another woman newly out in society. The British police are on his ass, and he's freaking out that they're going to catch him. He doesn't have exactly the most genius hiding spot. They're all in his massive Pemberley Lake that is stocked full with fish, but often left unattended. So when Mr. Bingley says that he's renting out a house in the countryside, Mr. Darcy jumps on the opportunity to escape the town for a little while. He swears the murder is over. Then he meets Lizzie Bennet. He resists temptation. He can't kill again. But then he touches her hand, and he is in. He tends to choose his victims via touch. And so that's why he reacts so much to it, because he's like, this is it. And then but he still tries to resist. But then he sees Mr. Wickham, the one who's gotten away before, and he realizes the murders are far from over.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So like, is Mr. Darcy like Jack the Ripper?
Yeah.
Like, that's what we find out after all this time.
Yep.
I would watch that, definitely.
Thank you.
Pride and Prejudice and Perilous Activities. Pride and Prejudice and Polka Dots.
Maybe Pride and Prejudice and Panic?
Yeah, that's
Yes. I was like, what's a gory word
got
that
there
starts with
eventually.
P?
forget my polka dot suggestion.
I don't really have like a casting or like a remake pitch, but I feel like Jane Austen stories have often been adapted for like modern era things and like high school stories or things like that. So I would actually be interested in having some modern stories and modern movies be turned into Regency era stuff that isn't like inherently written for that time period. And just thinking about like the type of relationship drama of those stories, I think the movie John Tucker Must Die and also Crazy Stupid Love, I think both those movies would be really good adaptations for Regency era movies. I think those would do a good job.
That's a good idea. Wow. You know how Lion King is Hamlet, we turn like Coco into Shakespeare.
Yeah, but also there's a very famous scene in Crazy Stupid Love where they just like tackle everybody. And I want to see what that scene would play out like in Regency era. Like in the middle of a ball or like walking in a field, they just start beating each other up.
Yeah.
And then the pianoforte in the background. So who's your daddy stats? First off, Rosamund Pike's parents were both opera singers. Let's just get her out of the way before we get into like the interesting stuff. Keira Knightley's family, so she's the youngest, and when her older brother was born and she was not alive, her parents are both theater actors and her mom's a playwright. Her dad, who wasn't her dad, I don't know how to explain, her soon-to-be dad, told her soon-to-be mom, we can have a second kid as long as you sell another play. And so she was like writing like crazy and sending things out. And then Alan Rickman picked up her play at the Bush Theater out of the slush pile and convince them to buy the play and put on that play, thus securing the birth of Keira Knightley. So we wouldn't have Keira Knightley without Alan Rickman.
She's like a double whammy Nepo baby of like her parents are famous, but also her conception was financed by a famous person.
Right? England's crazy.
Yeah, they really only have like 10 actors and that's it. They all know each other. They all went to the same school and they're all best buds.
Hopefully they're not cousins.
They all just like spawn one at a time and then they reign as one of 10 actors for the next 40 years. All right. Well, what's everyone been watching lately?
I finished watching Barry and I just finished watching Succession. So I've definitely been in like finale mode. I recently rewatched the movie Groundhog Day. And then also, what else did I watch? Oh my God.
Did you watch Groundhog Day again the next day and then again the next day? And
that has to be it because I'm blanking on the other movie I watched recently. I really enjoyed Groundhog Day. I kind of like remembered the gist of it, but it was a very enjoyable movie. It had Annie McDowell, Margaret Qualley's mom in it, and then Bill Murray, of course. And then I also rewatched the Mindy Project recently as just like something to have in the background. Because I never fully watched the end of that because it kind of fell off. And I think like Fox canceled it or NBC, wherever it was. And then Hulu picked it up and finished it out. And it got worse and really messy, but they wrapped it up nicely in the end. So that was fine. Yeah, Succession and Barry, watching those endings, they were like very well done. And I also think they were perfect endings for the type of shows that they were. And having seen like series finales in the past, a lot of times they're either more like fan service or just like the show went on like one too many seasons long, so that it was just like too messy by the time they tried to like tie everything up. That I think there were 2 like 4-season shows and I think they ended them like the way they intended to, and like it felt very purposeful and like full circle. So I very much enjoyed those shows, but very different vibes than Groundhog Day. Very intense shows. And then I watched Groundhog Day and was like, that was really sweet. Wow. We love.
I have never actually seen Groundhog Day, but I did go to 2 Groundhog Day celebrations in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania.
You're just a Pennsylvania gal. Look at you.
But they were freaking wild. My parents and I went. So it's like, in February. So it was freezing cold the first time that we went. And I think I was in like my sophomore year of high school. So I was like 14 or 15. We went and we had just bought an RV and it was, the middle of winter and it was one of the coldest Groundhog Days that they had in the past like 10 years. So it was like, oh gosh, I think like 5 degrees or something. And we had just bought this new RV and because a lot of people camp out in like this Walmart parking lot that's in the Punxsutawney area. And then you take these buses in, they bus you into the little area that of like it's basically like a big field that they do the actual celebration. And it was all like college kids from all of the nearby campuses like partying so hard all in the Walmart parking lot. There were people in RVs and campers, trailers, and then also like there were some tent campers too, but then people sleeping in their cars. But it was mostly college kids partying. So people were like puking for hours outside of our RV. And then my dad had like not read the manual yet on how to like turn on the heat inside of the RV. So we had no heat. And I like genuinely thought that I was going to pass away in my sleep. Like it was so cold. I was like, this is it. And I was like on the little like it was like a little dining table banquette that folds down into like a little bed. And I had like all these blankets piled on top of me. And then it was so cold that our like breathing in the night had caused when we woke up like 3 inches of ice to be on the inside of the RV, like from the condensation from our breath. It had frozen onto all the windows and everything. And it was like 3 inches thick. But then we went, and so then you get up at literally like it starts at 3 a.m. So you get up at 3 a.m. and you get on one of these buses and they bus you down like a 10-minute ride down into this field. And it's like a whole thing. They had fireworks, they had dance teams, they had like food trucks and carnival food. Like it's this whole thing. And literally like fireworks they did every hour on the hour from 3 a.m. until like 7 a.m. when they finally got Phil out there. And then they do like a whole speech, and all these people from the town that are like a part of the Phil like fan club or whatever, they put on like their old garb. And then they're like the prognosticator of prognosticators. And they hold it up, and then at the very end they like grab him and they hold him up to the crowd, and everyone goes batshit crazy. They're like, ah. They're like, it's Phil. And then everyone in the crowd would chant, and they would go, Phil, 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 Phil. So it was quite the experience. Then we went back the next year too. And thankfully it was a lot warmer, because it was freezing, because we were standing outside in this field from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning. So it was so cold, and I had to like have like hand warmer packets, and my feet were going numb. But the next year we went, and it was like in the 30s, so it was a lot warmer. But yeah, it was a trippy experience.
Oh wow, that's
but
crazy. Because
yeah.
definitely in the film, it's more of like a really cute small town with like all these quirky town characters. So definitely a lot less debauchery than it seems like in
Yeah.
reality, just all these college kids puking.
It was just,
But
yeah, they were drinking, and like there was kegs, they were doing keg stands and
at like 3 a.m.
yes, at like 3 a.m. and they were up all night, so it was funny. But Marriya and I just watched Anastasia together for a little virtual movie night yesterday, which was so good. I had never seen it, much to Maria's dismay. I actually like wasn't too invested in the love story between
Oh no.
her and Dimitri.
I love them.
I think like John Cusack's like voice just like
Oh,
turned
it's
me
John
off.
Cusack?
Yeah.
Oh
His
wow.
voice like turned me off the second that I like recognized it as being John Cusack. I was like, oh, I can't
I
can't
get that.
anymore. But I really loved it. The music was amazing. Like every single song was a bop. I watched another new movie, the Barbie movie. I went to
Oh
go see
yeah.
that with my parents. I drove back home for the weekend, and then my dad told me he's like a hospitalist, and he was working at a hospital that's like an hour and a half from our house back in Pennsylvania. So they like have him stay at a hotel every time he works up there. So my mom and I joined him at the hotel, and there's like this little like walking path nearby. And he was like, oh, like it's really nice. Like it's around a lake. We'll go for a little walk. And then the first showing of the Barbie movie at this like tiny town theater at this small town in rural Pennsylvania was showing at like 12:30, and it was like 11 a.m. and we were like, okay. And so we go on this walk. It was an hour and a half walk, and we started at 11 a.m. and it was not around a lake. It was through the woods. I was being eaten alive by bugs. And I like told my dad, I was like, I want to look cute for the Barbie movie. I brought a pink dress
Aw.
with me. So I was sweating, and I was like, we were spraying like bug spray like crazy. And then we had the RV there with us too. And so then we were rushing to get back. And this was like, my dad does this all the time. This is not the first time he said we were going on a walk, and it was literally like an hour and a half hike. So then we were like running because it was getting closer and closer to 12:30. So then I changed in the RV while he was driving it to the movie theater so that I could put on my little Barbie dress and put on my makeup to go and see it. But I loved it. I missed the Barbie pod because unfortunately my roommate was in the hospital. But I really wanted to join because I love Barbie movies so much. The first Barbie movie was Barbie Nutcracker, and it was released on October 2nd, which is my birthday, 2001.
Aw.
And all of the Barbie movies were always released around my birthday. So either like on my birthday or the week before or after. So my mom would always buy them for me. But I just thought it was like masterful, the Barbie movie. Like I loved it so much. I gave it like 5 stars. So really loved that. I watched Monsters Inc., which was good. And I went through like another bout of rewatching like childhood movies on Disney Plus.
I saw the Beanie Bubble on Apple TV, which is about like the beanie craze of the 90s, and like it's about how awful of a person Ty was, who was like the CEO, and how all of his success is about like the 3 women who like one woman who like designed the website, and he never really like paid her very much. And then all of the kids who gave him ideas, and like they were originally on the tags and it was like designed by Ava or whatever. In the movie they changed the names, and then he changed it to be his name and stuff because he like couldn't like compare with the child. And then like the his business partner that he like cut out. So I really like that. People are like, it's a good story, but there's no like cinema to it. And I feel like, I don't know, I don't really care. Like it's just like it was kind of interesting. It was directed by Al Gore's daughter, which so she has a career, which is good for her. And then to kind of keep that like toy game vibe going, because I had also seen Barbie. Then I watched Tetris, also on Apple TV, which was kind of boring. Not my favorite thing. I didn't realize that the Tetris was created in the Soviet Union, and then like it created a bunch of problems where they're like, we don't sell things from the Soviet Union, and so then it was like an illegal thing in the US. I don't know. So it was like the Wikipedia page about Tetris is more interesting than the movie, because everyone, it was just like bad acting. Everyone was just screaming, and like people can talk normally. Like that's a thing. I don't know. It felt like a stage play. I don't know. And then I saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which just came out on Disney Plus, which I loved. The soundtrack is great. There's a rocket origin story, and I own a rocket stuffed animal. So like legally, even though it was gifted to me for Secret Santa, but like legally, because I own him, he has to be my favorite Guardian in Guardians of the Galaxy. So I was excited to see more Rocket Raccoon content.
Wait, so do you think I can watch it without having seen the like million Marvel shows or movies that have come out in between?
Yeah. I mean, they kind of fill in like a little bit. They're like, so like Gamora is dead. And so basically like she's replaced with like her past version. But they kind of like remind us of that a lot. There was the whole thing of like Thor joining the Guardians, but that's not in this movie. I would say that you're fine. But did you know that Chris Pratt was discovered as he waited tables at the Bubba Gump Shrimp Co. Nepo-wise, Linda Cardellini. She also has another role here. She's like has like at least 2 roles in the MCU, so Queen. But she was a contestant in a 1994 episode of The Price is Right, winning a fireplace. So yeah, I think that helped her.
I love Linda Cardellini. Oh my God.
Me too.
Yeah, I also, it wasn't until Brooke mentioned Barbie that I forgot all the theatrical releases that I've seen, because I did see Barbie and Oppenheimer. And then last night I also saw Theater Camp was the movie I forgot.
Oh,
The new movie, I think it just came out, but it was with Ben Platt, Molly Gordon, who I love, Io Adibri. I think that's how you say her last name. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. But and she's in like a ton of movies coming out. But that movie was very, very good, very, very funny. Apparently Molly Gordon and Ben Platt went to theater camp together as kids too. So they have all this archival footage of like them actually as kids performing plays together. It's very cute.
They're both Nepo babies.
Yeah.
They're both very Nepo babies. And I think they directed the movie as well, but super funny, super hilarious. I've been seeing a lot of ads for the movie on TikTok as well. They also had like a lot of really funny bits of like clips on TikTok that weren't included in the movie. And I was like, they were so funny. Like there needs to be, it's like the first movie in a long time that I watched, and I was like, I wish it was longer. Like I wish they just like kept in all the jokes. Definitely recommend it if you guys are looking to see another movie in theaters. Also, like Barbie was great.
Yeah, I loved it. All right, where can they find us on social media?
They can find us at Remake Hot Take on all social media that you can probably think of. And you can find me at Marriya Schwarz on probably all social media that you can think of. Silvana, do you want to be found?
I don't want to be found, but I've been on other episodes if they want to watch them.
Yeah.
So check out our other episodes of Silvana. And then they can find me at B_ReeseCup on Instagram. And my Twitter is still private, so you can't find me on there. I'm interviewing for jobs. Well, thanks so much for watching, everybody.
Yay. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.